My name is Chuck Emerson. I have a 720 acre farm just east of Belton. Having grown up in Dallas-Fort Worth and having to go to my grandparents to enjoy the country, I was always the grandkid that wanted to go and spend the summers with my grandmother. My granddad had passed, and I just really enjoy being out in the country. So actually that's how I got my desire. Having grown up in a big city, it was kind of an escape to get out on the land. And when we had the opportunity to buy this place, it didn't take me long to make that decision if I could swing it financially. I recall telling the folks here that we bought this from, it had been in their family for just 3 years shy of 100 years. And I told them I would be honored to take care of it if they would give me that opportunity. And they did. This land was primarily used for growing crops in the wide open areas, and then in the whatever wasn't good for crops, they had cattle on it. And neither was really a passion for me. I have cattle, but it's not how I make a living. I was not a farmer, didn't want to be a farmer, but I certainly appreciate what farmers do for us, don't get me wrong. I wanted, more than anything, I wanted to return this land back to what it was, what I envisioned it was before man set foot here. So I was in the NRCS office one day because I had this particular weed that I thought was a really nasty looking weed. It had a thistle on it, had spikes on it about as long as my little finger. And they had a picture of it on their door. I said, I got some of those. And then so I went in and I introduced myself, and that's when I met Troy Rinke. And he educated me on what that thistle was about, and that I needed to deal with it or I'd have a whole pasture full of it. And then we got to talking about other things, and I mentioned that I wanted to take some of this plowed land back to grasses and all this. And man, he just started laying it out, everything that the NRCS could do for me to help me do that. I met Jeff Brewster took his place, and Jeff's been a pleasure to work with.
I'm Jeff Brewster, and I'm the District Conservationist for the Natural Resources Conservation Service in Bell County, Texas. I started working with Chuck Emerson in the spring of 2021. Chuck is a very progressive landowner who cares a lot about his property and the land in general. Wildlife is important to Chuck as well as his ag operation, and he tries to balance both in a very conservation-minded way.
The plan to get back to native grasses involved at least a year, I think I did it 2 years, of just cover crops. And cover crops in particular that they recommended, it was a quail and turkey mix. And that is, in fact, when we started seeing the quail.
One of the benefits of taking cropland or previously plowed land and putting it into native pastures or range mix would be, number one, you're increasing biodiversity and improving wildlife habitat. And native grasses, or those plants that would have been here historically that native wildlife have adjusted to, are beneficial. And so one of the benefits is improving wildlife habitat. Another would be protecting the soil from erosion. Typically, when a field is plowed over and over again, you have soil erosion issues that have to be addressed either through terraces, waterways, cover crops, or some other method. And taking those areas out of production and putting them into native grasses is one of the best ways to protect the soil.
But then, so this year we've gone to the final stage, I guess you'd call it that, planted the natives. Native seeds are very expensive, all of them. Again, I'm very grateful for NRCS because they're stupid expensive, but they are a one-time planting. I'm going to do this 1 year, it's gonna take off, I hope, if we can ever get some rains. And then now all I gotta do is manage it. And NRCS has taught me how to do that and covered the bulk of the cost. So yeah, I have much appreciation for NRCS.
I believe that Chuck's always had a lifelong interest in wildlife and the outdoors. And so trying to balance his agricultural program with his wildlife program was very important to him. And taking cropland out of production and putting it into native grasses was an important step for Chuck in order to help build habitat and maintain biodiversity on his farm. Our natural resources are a very important resource to the state society as a whole, and the protection of those resources is very important, because if we lose them, they could be lost forever. And education is the #1 way to prevent that from happening. Working with Chuck Emerson has been a pleasure. He's doing a great job. He cares about the land, he cares about his wildlife, he cares about his ag operation. He is a true conservationist.
I just think it's really important that we make this land, leave it in better shape than the way we got it. I don't know where that comes from, but it just seems important to me.